The next day, I visited Universal Studios Japan. This would be my second visit to the park, and since my last visit, they'd constructed the tallest, fastest and longest flying coaster in the world, the Flying Dinosaur.
So today I'm at Universal Studios and I just rode the Flying Dinosaur. And I have to say, I really enjoyed it. I was surprised by how much actual airtime there was in it. There's loads of air in the first drop, which is a bit unusual for a flying coaster. And then you've got this zero-G roll, and straight into the zero-G roll, well, straight out of the zero-G roll, you've got this element that's kind of like a pretzel loop almost. But you're just completely weightless from the point you come up the turn to it.
The Rollercoaster database lists this element sequence as an inline twist into a fly-to-lie, then a raven turn, but it feels more like an extended zero-G roll, where you spin an extra 180 degrees, ending up on your back, all the while remaining weightless as you plummet skull first towards the ground. It felt incredible.
Some people I know have ridden it and think it's a bit too intense. I disagree, I think it's intense enough. There's a helix towards the end that you get a little bit of G-force, but I don't think it's excessive. And like I say, the rest of the layout, it's really fun. Previously my favourite flyer was Tatsu, but I'd rate this above it. Hopefully I'll get to ride later. As with most places in Japan like this, it's quite busy today, so there are queues. But fingers crossed we'll get another ride later.
After the zero-G element and raven turn, you go into a standard pretzel loop, but this is a little twist in that it goes into an underground tunnel by the entrance. It gives a really cool visual in front of the Jurassic Park sign too.
So just had my second ride on the Flying Dinosaur. I was lucky enough to get a front seat this time. Still enjoyed it. I'd say it was getting a bit, it was more intense in the front than the first ride I had. What I do like about it is there's actually quite a bit of airtime in the inversions. Like in the pretzel bits, the up part you've got air, and then like when you go down and underneath and back up again, there's even more airtime. It is quite a forceful coaster. Like I said, the front was more forceful than where I was before. But let's go around and see how it rides again.
The ride stands over 150 feet tall, and at the bottom of the first drop, you reach a top speed in excess of 60 miles an hour. The drop is the tallest of any flying coaster in the world, despite the overall height of this ride being slightly less than the previous record holder, Tatsu, at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Both of these coasters are great rides, but I have to say that for me, the Flying Dinosaur is on another level from Tatsu. I do love the glowing wheels of Tatsu though, and I hope they appear on other coasters in the future.
So the bit behind me here is probably my favourite part of the ride and the most surprising. It's a zero-G roll, but then you end up on your back, and during that bit it just feels like you're in free fall. It's quite a strange sensation, but then from the on your back bit it goes upwards, so it feels then like a bit of a pretzel loop. It caught me by surprise. I'm not even sure what you'd call the element, but it's good fun, as you can see. One thing I like about the Flying Dinosaur is it's all over a pathway area, so you can just walk around, look up above you, and the rides just seems to be everywhere. It's really quite cool. It also helps when you're riding the coaster, as there's lots of sort of greenery and jungly bits that feels like you're going through.
The proximity to the ground and the surrounding trees really add to the sense of speed and the feeling of soaring over the whole Jurassic Park area.
So just rode the back seat of Flying Dinosaur. It's pretty intense. It's certainly hauling. You really get sort of pulled through some of the elements and transitions. It really snaps you. The G-forces feel much stronger, and that sort of second element, the zero-G roll into the raven turn, is just absolutely insane. The way it does this sort of nosedive, keeps twisting from the zero-G roll, and it just feels like you're going to crash head first, well, the back of your head first into the ground. It's nuts. You really feel the pull round in that element, and the pretzel loop too. You really feel it sort of deep in your gut with the G-force. It's insane. I'm going to ride again.
Watching the coaster off-ride, it really has a graceful flow to it, swooping over the scenery and transitioning from one aerobatic manoeuvre to the next. I'm not that keen on the name though. I think the Flying Dinosaur sounds a bit strange and bland, and they missed out on calling it something like Pterosaur, or even better, Terrorsaur. They could even have a tagline about having a silent P from fear when you ride it. Jokes aside, this is a really great coaster, and it's made a fantastic addition to the park's lineup of attractions. Over the last few years, the park has seen quite a bit of an investment and expansion, and next year, a whole Super Nintendo Land is expected to open. I can't wait to see how the park translates the Nintendo characters and games into new rides and experiences, and hopefully it'll be on a par, or even better than the Jurassic Park section. The Jurassic area had changed quite a bit since I was last here, as at that time the Flying Dinosaur was still under construction, and a lot of the area was closed off. It was quite strange to see this huge, unfinished coaster looming over the park, and returning to ride it was a great experience. After a couple of rides on the Flying Dinosaur, I went to explore the rest of the Jurassic Park section, starting with Jurassic Park the ride.
So I just rode the Japanese version of Jurassic Park the ride. It's good fun. I mean, it's very similar to the one in America. You may notice that you do get slightly wet in it. But it's good. It's a nice sort of story to the ride. It takes you through jungly bits where there's lots of different animatronic dinosaurs. They are looking a little on the dated side, possibly do with a bit of an update, but it still all fits in. But then partway around you go kind of off course, and then you end up going into sort of backstage areas, and then up this hill where you're attacked by other dinosaurs, and finally there's a giant T-Rex comes out and you hit the drop that you see behind me. But it's good fun. Like I say, the pacing and story are what make it good.
After spending some time drying off in the sun, I went for some lunch in the rather impressively themed Discovery Centre restaurant. After that, it was time to check out another coaster, the VR version of Space Fantasy.
So I've just ridden Lupin the Third XR VR, something like that. I'll get the title in just a minute. So yes, Lupin the Third, car chase. I'm sure there was like an XD or VR in the title on the map. But yeah, basically it's Space Fantasy, except with VR headsets and an anime theme that I know nothing about. The VR was actually quite well implemented. It almost felt more like a motion simulator ride than it did a roller coaster. I believe it's a Mac spinner inside, but I know that they can program the cars to spin at certain bits. So whether that made things work better or worse, I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, the VR lined up with the track really nicely. It's set so that you're in a car with these two anime characters in front of you. And everything's updating like very smooth, except the characters' animations are quite jerky. So they seem to be running at a lower frame rate than the rest of the simulation, if that's the right word to say. But yeah, it was good fun. Like I said, it didn't really feel much like a roller coaster. It was more motion simulator than anything else. But it was fun. Quite a long wait though.
One slightly sad change since the last time I visited this park was the removal of Back to the Future the ride. I remember as a kid seeing adverts and TV specials about this ride and thinking it looked absolutely amazing. The ride closed in the USA in 2007, but it remained running in Japan until 2016, and I consider myself really fortunate to have been able to experience it in its final year, albeit with a Japanese language overdub. It was a little dated at the time though, with the ride taking you to the distant future of the year 2015. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little disappointed with the ride. The projection technology was rather faint and low resolution by today's standards, or compared to the Simpsons ride that replaced it in America. But the ride has a real charm to it, and I'd have loved to have seen a remastered version with modern technology, rather than the Minions ride which has replaced it here in Japan.
Here goes the Flying Dinosaur. So this is actually my second visit to Universal Studios Japan. And the first one was a couple of years ago, and I actually went during the Halloween event, which was really quite cool. They had a few extra attractions and tweaks on the current attractions. So one of the cool ones I did was Resident Evil, the Real, which basically was a shooting horror walkthrough themed around Resident Evil. It was quite neat. You got these glasses which had like a little score counter, ammunition counter in the corner. Dinosaur. And the costumes they used for the Resident Evil monsters were really good. Like they had liquor ones that just looked absolutely like they shoot from the game. And at the end they had the Nemesis monster kill you all. But it was really good. More of the rides actually had makeovers as well, so Space Fantasy, which seems to be their go-to for changing, it actually had a Sudoku, Sakura, the weird crazy ring lady from the Ring horror films. It had a version with that in it that was like in the dark and spooky. And so did Terminator 2, the show here. halfway through the show, well, near the start of the show, she started appearing and spooking people out. It's really quite neat. Anyway, I'm going to go back and ride the Flying Dinosaur again, I think. So just did my third ride on Flying Dinosaur. Now, I know I said on the second one at the front I thought it was more intense there. I'm no longer 100% sure it's just the front location that's the case. I think it's that it's warmed up now, and it's getting very intense. It's definitely getting faster. It was on the fourth row this time, and yeah, I think the elements just have a bit more force to them. It's kind of reminded me of a bit of old school B&M. Anyway, I'm going to try and ride something else just now. Let's have some fun.
Next up would be Hollywood Dream, the ride.
So I've just ridden Hollywood Dream, which is a kind of almost B&M hypercoaster. I say kind of, as it's under 200 feet, but it's still got the typical layout of a hypercoaster. It's quite good fun. One thing that was weird was I went on the single rider line, which was advertised at about a 30-minute wait, but it was walk-on single rider. So I ended up going around and riding it twice. It's good fun. There's lots of floater airtime in it, which is kind of what you expect for B&M Hyper. But towards the end, there's a helix, which actually gives some sustained force, and you almost get a little bit of grey out on it. There's a nice little chicane towards the end as well that reminds me a bit of Silver Star. It's a good fun ride. One interesting thing is that Universal, they actually do it two ways. So one of the trains actually runs backwards, which they call backdrop. So hopefully I'll get a chance to ride the backwards version later today as well. So just did Hollywood Dream again. It's a really good fun coaster. Like I said, it's not as tall as a hypercoaster, but it's got the same sort of layout. There's plenty of airtime there. Every single hill gives a lot of sustained floater airtime, so it's good fun. One slight weird thing is that they check you over with metal detectors before boarding. It's a bit odd, so they don't do that on the other coaster. But basically, you go in, you cross over, put your bag down, then come back, and then they wait and scan every single person with a metal detector. Seems a bit excessive and slows things down a bit. Still, they're on at least 3 trains, with one of them going backwards, so the queue moves reasonably well at least.
Next, I headed to the Harry Potter section of the park.
So I just did the Japanese version of Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. It's very similar to the one in Florida. However, I think that the projection technology is a little bit more up to date here. The screens certainly look a bit sharper and a bit smoother as well. The rest of the ride, I think, is the same. It could be my bad memory from the last time I was in Florida, but the bit with the spiders seemed to last a bit longer, and the bit with the Dementors also. It's a really good ride. The technology is fantastic in it, and it's really quite a good use of the Harry Potter property. The other thing that's strange here is it's almost exactly the same layout as the Florida version. It's kind of eerie to be walking around this place in Japan, as it feels just like the one in Florida. I half expect looking over to my left there and seeing the remains of dueling dragons. We just did Flight of the Hippogriff. Now, one thing that's slightly different from the American version is the Hippogriff itself is actually a bit better hidden. Because I remember in the American one, you could see it from like the queue line you were in. This, you don't really see it until you're on the roller coaster itself. Other than that, it's pretty much identical. Good, solid family coaster.
The theming and detail really was something that stood out in the area though.
Walking through Hogsmeade, it's really kind of eerie. It's just so similar to the one in Florida. Like I say, the layout of the shops, everything seems pretty much identical. I half expect to look over to my left there and see dueling dragons, or at least what's left of it. Or I guess the new Hagrid coaster that's going there. Like I say, it's just strange just how absolutely identical it is to the American version. Like in this building here, it's the exact same shape, and up top should be owls. And there is. But the other thing I noticed as well is if we get around here, I'm pretty sure the old entrance for Dueling Dragons was over on the left here. So it's still got the same bit, but obviously they've added something to it with these magic wand things. And of course we have the Hogwarts Express behind me as well. Except this one doesn't move to a new area. At least not yet anyway. Maybe one day it will go to the new Nintendo area that's being built at the moment.
Next up was one of the most famous Universal rides in the world, Jaws.
So Japan is the last place in the world where you can still do the Jaws ride. It used to be at the other Universal parks, but sadly they got rid of it. I've got to say, it's a fantastic ride. It's got a real sort of story to it, and just got a really good flow. Every ride can be a little bit different as well, because there's actors in it basically, that take you around on the boat. But it's a nice section of the park as well. The whole park's really nice. But I'm especially glad I got to do the Jaws ride. Because like I said, it doesn't exist at the other Universal parks anymore, and it's really sort of a classic. Growing up, I used to see sort of things on theme parks on TV, and the Jaws ride was very often featured on it.
It really is a fantastic attraction, and undoubtedly one of the best movie rides in the whole world. This time I was lucky enough to experience the ride at night, and the darkness enhanced things greatly, with fire and lighting effects reflecting off the water, and the darkness made all the animatronics seem more realistic. The whole Amity Cove area was lit up really nicely in the dark as well, which really added to the immersion. Making the most of the darkness, I went back to ride the Flying Dinosaur yet again, this time in total darkness.
So just did Flying Dinosaur at night, and it was pretty awesome. You get an absolutely fantastic view going up the lift hill. You can just see out all over Universal Studios, and it's just really, really pretty. Everything's all lit up. It's great. It's a really fantastic coaster. It's probably a bit on the too intense side for quite a lot of people. I like it, but there's some really intense parts. Like there's a few where you're on your back in the pretzel loop and the Raven turn, and you really feel the G-force sort of deep within your gut. It's impressive. It might make it a bit difficult to re-ride a lot of times, as like I say, it takes a bit out of you riding it. But I like it. I'd say it's probably the best flying coaster. I've not done Sky Ripper, but certainly I'd say it's better than Tatsu, better than Air, better than Superman, better than Manta, and better than Acrobat.
With Flying Dinosaur being the tallest ride in the park, it really stood out and looked phenomenal at night.
So just did a backseat night ride on Flying Dinosaur, which was pretty insane. I've got to say, my favourite bit of the ride still has to be that crazy second element. You come out of a zero-G roll and then keep spinning on your back, and it just feels like it's just insane. It feels like you're going to get dragged straight into the ground. It's nuts. But yeah, this is probably the best flying coaster there is.
I know I've already gushed about this sequence of elements several times in the video, but it's just something completely different from any other coaster I've been on. B&M, the manufacturer of this ride, usually play things fairly safe these days. I really like that they've gone and pushed the envelope a bit with this ride and made it something special. After squeezing in another couple of night rides, it was soon time for the park to close. But fortunately there was one final experience there, a massive nighttime parade. The parade was one of the better ones that I've seen. It started out with the Jurassic Park section, including several different dinosaurs. There was a Stegosaurus, a Hadrosaur that seemed to have gotten a bit lost, and a cage full of Velociraptors. Things got a bit more exciting when the cage opened and the Velociraptors escaped. I thought it was quite a well done sequence, although some of the Velociraptors seemed to have a little bit more energy than the other ones. The finale was a huge and very impressive T-Rex animatronic. It had a good range of motion, and the soundtrack synced up really well with its movements. The Jurassic Park section of the parade was undoubtedly my favourite. The floats and the animatronics and the costumes were all brilliant, and showed some real creativity. Unfortunately, what was next was the minions. Just like the characters themselves, the parade floats were loud, garish, and designed to appeal to kids. I thought the float with the roller coaster as part of the theming was decent though, and it helped to tie it back into the rest of the park. Drew even had his own roller coaster to ride as he went round. The minions continued to sing and dance, until eventually the Hogwarts Express showed up. The train was quite impressive, and the carriage it towed had some interesting scenes that played out on it. There was a quite well done Quidditch scene too, and a heated battle between students and Death Eaters that played out on one of the floats. After that, it was time for the Transformers to take the main stage, starting with Bumblebee. One thing I particularly liked about the whole parade was the use of projection mapping on all the buildings. It really made them seem to come alive. After showing off a few more Transformers and Decepticons, the highlight of the parade came, where a truck transformed into Optimus Prime. The sequence was very well done. It changed from truck to robot and back again several times during the parade. It was definitely one of the best parades I'd seen in a park. But once it was over, it was time to say goodbye to Universal Studios Japan and think about the park as a whole.
Universal definitely has a different vibe from other parks in Japan. It's very Americanish, if that makes sense. Very commercial orientated. Lots of shops selling everything and every kind of touch you could possibly want to buy, or souvenirs. Whether that's a good thing or not, I'm not sure. It does give a different experience to a lot of the more traditional Japanese parks. And I suppose more choice is better. But yeah, it does feel very, very American. Even sort of things like the music they play, it's all in English. On the Hollywood Dream Coaster as well, like the music tracks, I think that half of them are English, half of them are Japanese. One thing I noticed was they don't really seem to line up with the coaster at all. I remember on Rip Ride Rocket, like they sort of did select cuts of the music, so that like it lined up, so on the drop you had like a particular bit playing. This just seemed to like play a random music track, and it didn't really seem to line up with anything. Anyway, I'm going to try and figure out the subway system now. Wish me luck.
Overall, I had a fantastic day at Universal Studios Japan. The new flying coaster really exceeded my expectations, and there's a lot of things to do in the park. The next day would see me continuing south and stopping off at Himeji Central Park, where as well as riding coasters, I'd have a close encounter with some rather friendly capybaras. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you again in another one very soon.